Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscription Scaled. I'm your host, Nick Frederick. With me today is Tim Stoddart, who runs a bunch of different companies, and we can get into that. But Tim, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Likewise. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm always privileged and humbled when somebody wants to talk to me about what I'm doing. So I appreciate your time.
Definitely. Well, yeah, we're excited to have you on. I guess for listeners who maybe don't know about you or your background very well, give us a little flavor about your experience. And I know you've run several different companies, so tell us about those.
Man, where do I start? It all started with me with writing, and I'm a huge advocate for writing. Writing has been really the foundation for everything that I do, and that also includes sales. The majority of my time these days is spent closing deals, but I think good writing and good communication skills makes all of that makes me good at that. Like, I'm not the best salesperson ever, but I've closed a lot of business, and so I feel pretty confident with it. But yeah, I mean, geez, starting at the beginning, I was in a strange point in my life. I had moved to South Florida. I grew up in Philadelphia, and what was I? I was 23, and I was really looking for some direction for a lot of different ways. It was kind of a troubled time, and I had somebody who I'd consider a mentor bought me a subscription to Success Magazine, and every time I tell this story, it always makes me laugh because this was only 12 years ago, but every issue of Success Magazine had a CD in it. It was an interview. And so I know, right? So I saw this one. It was a guy named Seth Godin. And I didn't know who Seth Godin was. I never heard of him. And I put the CD in, and I was cleaning my room. I had just moved into this apartment with a roommate that I had met down there. Another guy that was kind of in the same position as me, trying to do a little bit better than he had been. And I don't remember very much of the interview. I do remember it was right when Seth Godin had released Purple Cow, which is one of his pretty famous books. And at the very end, I remember very specifically the people interviewing Seth Godin did the typical, like, well, where would you suggest somebody start question? And he said, start a blog, don't tell anybody about it, and write in it every day. And there was just something about that message that I thought, like, yeah, fine. Like, I can do that. And so I went to a blog spot and started a blog. And it was super random. I would write about the most random stuff. I remember I wrote a post about how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And, I wrote a post about hanging out with my dog and living in South Florida, this new place with palm trees. And, I had hardly really ever left home. And I didn't tell anybody about it because Seth Godin told me not to. And so about 6 months or so into it, I started tinkering around and seeing that there was a couple people reading my site. I'm like, how are people finding this? Like, I didn't
how'd they find it?
About it.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's how I discovered SEO, and that's how I got into content marketing, and that's when it really first clicked that, like, wow, I can write online and make something of it. So I'd always been a writer. My mom was really into poetry when she was younger, and she was a little bit more like artsy about it than me. She just loved reading me poems, and we would read books every night before we went to bed. And so, like, reading and words was just always a big part of my life. And from that moment on, I just said, I have no idea what this is going to turn into, but I'm going to do it. And I really, really went after it. And that's how I got to the point where I've been able to build a conglomerate of media companies. I've expanded, like, we have a podcast now, and sometimes I make videos and stuff, but for I'd say like 80% of everything is either long form blog posts that I write and newsletters that my team and I put together. And I love it. That's how it all started. And, it's 13 plus years later, and I'm still writing a blog post every morning on a blog that nobody knows about. And a lot of people read it, but nobody even really knows that it's me. And
Yeah.
it's still just part of my routine and my makeup. And I think I'll do it until I die.
Are you still writing about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches there, or is there
Uh,
some specific content? Okay.
sure.
Certainly not for yourself anymore, for your children, probably, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. I got to teach them the important things in life.
Absolutely. That's one of the basics for sure. Has writing always come naturally to you? I mean, if you've done it this long, clearly you enjoy it, so you're probably motivated by it. But coming from somebody who I can write, I think I'm decent at it, but it can be painful sometimes, to sit down and, from a disciplinary perspective, making yourself do it, but then just to get the words to come out. So has it come easy for you?
For sure. I you can't see right now, it's off camera, and I'm in my office, and there's a giant stack of notebooks that I've carried with me for my whole life. I mean, stacks of them. It's
Uh-huh.
30 years of my life. And
Yeah.
I was the kid, I was terrible at school. Every class, I was doing nothing but, I would just write lyrics to songs that I'd memorized in my notebook.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know where it came from. Actually, that's not true. I do know where it came from. Like I told you, my mom and I used to read a lot, or reading was part of like our routine, and reading was
Mhm.
something that was really instilled in me as a kid. I remember reading the book Harriet the Spy. Um, some people might not even know what that book is, but basically it was this little girl that just walked around her neighborhood all the time, and she had all these notebooks, and she would record everything that she saw. And
Mhm.
when I was little, I just thought that was the coolest thing, and so I started doing it. And it's really just turned into this natural outlet for me. So I'm meandering a bit into a story now, but yeah, writing really has always just been. I'm not gonna say it's easy because it's like the hardest thing in the world to do, right?
Yeah.
But I've always felt comfortable in that flow state.
Yeah.
Like it's very easy for me
Yeah.
to just get started and just let it come out of me.
Yeah. So it was the blog that really gave you I can actually turn this into a business and into a living. It's kind of where you started, and then just everything grew from there.
One thing happened at a time, for sure. That blog eventually turned into a website called Sober Nation, which I still have today. It's a
Yeah.
giant blog and media site for people that are basically trying to get sober, that are struggling
Mhm.
with drug and alcohol addiction. And that site's been super, super successful. And that's really where it all started from me. But the educational piece, I would say, is as I was learning to write online, because there's a different way to do it for when you're writing online.
Okay.
And as I was learning to do that, there was this website I discovered called Copyblogger. And I'd wake up every morning, and like the first thing I would do is read Copyblogger. And even as I was writing the articles for Sober Nation, sometimes I would just blatantly copy the format of the blog post that I read. So they're two different topics, obviously, but the formatting and even just how they styled it. And if it was a list post, maybe the article for the day on Copyblogger was like 5 ways to be more aware in your writing. It's on Sober Nation. I do like 5 ways to be more aware in your sobriety. And,
Yeah.
I'd say like, okay, they put the
Mhm.
bullet points a third of the way through. So I'm going to do that. And they have 4 different headers, and they have a CTA at the end
Mhm.
of the article. And so it's really where I learned the craft of not just
Yeah.
writing, but blogging.
Yeah.
And 10 years into it, I was able to meet the founder of that website. His name is Brian Clark. He was like a hero of mine. Seriously, it was like everything that I wanted to be. And I was able to develop a friendship with him. And eventually I was able to buy the majority equity in Copyblogger and be partners with Brian Clark, which within itself was like a dream come true. And then, gosh, it was probably 3 months ago now at this point. Even Brian, he'd been involved with Copyblogger for 20 years, and I think he was moving on to some other things. And so I bought out his stake of the company, and now it all kind of came full circle with this website that really taught me everything that I know. I became the torchbearer, so to speak, and now I feel this big responsibility to kind of pass this forward to the next group of people who are looking for ideas and looking for direction in their life and thinking to themselves, you know what, I can be a writer. and
Mhm.
show them like, yeah, you totally can, because if I can do it, like bullies, like if I figured it
Yeah.
out, you can figure it out. So yeah, that's been it. That's like that's a shortened version, very shortened, but that's the
Yeah.
last 14 years of my life.
Wow. But you also have some other companies, right? You have an internet marketing company?
Stodzy was the first like business that I started, and
Okay.
that was just an opportunity because I mean, as you can't, maybe you could have figured out, but for the people listening to this, like when I moved out of Philly and I moved to Florida, like I was having really, really bad problems with addiction. And so I was getting sober at this point in my
Okay.
life, and like Sober Nation
Yep.
was sort of this cleansing process for me. And through that I learned this skill of SEO, and I learned how to build communities. And as I was getting really into it, there was this guy, oh my gosh, what the hell's his name? Can't remember. He's the CEO of a company called Nifty Marketing, Nifty. And
Okay.
he wrote this super long article on Moz back when Moz used to have like this public forum. And in the article, I'll never forget it, he talked about how he decided he was going to start an internet marketing company. And the guy who's writing the article, I think his name is Dave. Maybe it's not. I'm just going to call him Dave. Dave was talking about how he was speaking to a mentor, and his mentor said, there's like tens of thousands of internet marketing companies in the country. Why are you going to be any different? And Dave said at that time that he realized he needed to be specific. And that's when he decided to be a local marketing company. And when I read that, it really just clicked like, wow, I have all of this strange experience in an addiction treatment type industry. There's a lot of behavioral health centers out there. Like none of them know anything about digital anything because they're all clinicians. And I don't know if you know any doctors, but they're not marketers.
That's not their thing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And it just really clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to build an SEO agency that specializes in behavioral health.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was 11 years ago at this point, maybe 12. It was about a year and a half into Sober Nation. Sober Nation, I built like some awareness and a bit of a reputation in this space, And so about a year and a half into that, my best friend and I decided to start Stodzy. I know it's a weird name for a company. It was my nickname when I was a kid, and
I figured as much.
I guess I never expected it to be, like such a big enterprise. Maybe I would have thought twice about it if I knew the future. But honestly, it's pretty. The name is like memorable, and I think people hear it and go like, "What the hell does that mean?" So it's worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a pretty niche area to focus on. Although, if you think about it, probably a pretty big one. Is there a lot of competition there? And for those, organizations, those doctors who operate those kind of centers, how are they finding you and your services?
Find me through SEO.
Okay.
I SEO my own website. It's actually a really big advantage that we have because most SEOs have terrible SEO on their website.
Yeah.
So it's really worked for me when someone will call and they'll be like, well, how do I know that this is going to work? And I'm like, well, how'd you find me?
You found me.
Well, I Googled you. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't know what else you want me to say, There are there's a ton of competition. I mean, really, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And as I started learning, I discovered that like behavioral health and debt settlement and personal injury law, it's like behavioral health is like top 5 most difficult markets that there is.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah.
I thought that.
Because I mean, just think about it. Anytime anybody does anything health related, even if you're going to a chiropractor or a dentist or just anything like that, the first thing you do is you pull up your phone and you just Google like chiropractor near me,
Mm-hmm.
So there's only one way other than referrals, like word of mouth referrals, but digitally, there's only one way that anybody ever finds anything healthcare related.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the facilities just sort of swimming in the same pond, let's say. But yeah, we got in really early before it turned into huge competition on the internet. So I think that we probably what's the expression, like forged the path is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Since then there's been a new internet marketing company that specializes in behavioral health like every week, but we've really continued to be at the top, and I think that's just because of the dedication and like commitment that we've all had
Right.
to this space through our own experience.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of internet marketing companies that have different, I guess, practice areas or areas of focus, but that just means that represents a group of clients, not necessarily an area that they really, really laser focused on. But it sounds like that was where you started and where you continue to focus. Do you go outside of, you know, I don't want to say healthcare, but behavioral health and addiction and those types of things?
Not really. The only place that we've ever branched out on is mental health facilities, but it's basically the same thing. I don't. It's
Okay.
now we're having like a little bit of a different conversation, but many times when people have addiction problems, they also have mental health problems, and so
Yeah.
it's pretty adjacent. It's
Yeah.
just only within the last couple of years that there's been more standalone mental health facilities as
Sure.
opposed to like addiction treatment facilities that also offer mental health
Okay.
services.
Yeah.
So that's opened up like a whole new area of clientele for us, but
Okay.
uh, it's kind of the same thing, really, just a
Yeah.
little different.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe talk for a little bit just about the revenue model of your businesses, because Copyblogger, I think you said, is a subscription service in and of itself. But even your internet marketing service, I assume these are long-term engagements where you're continuing to, engage with that client and optimize SEO on an ongoing basis. So with all of your businesses, would you say they are ongoing relationships?
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I don't think I have a single thing that like isn't
Really?
on some kind of recurring revenue model.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm funny.
Never quite thought about it that way, but that's kind of how it works out, huh?
Yeah, but certainly, so Stodzy is absolutely long-term contracts and monthly invoices. It's an agreement. It's
Yep.
not a web design a la carte service, maybe, but it's totally different from what Copyblogger was. I've really thought that when I made the move. So you didn't ask me this question, but let me give you a little bit of context. I remember, what was it? It was probably 2017, maybe even sooner, 2016. And me and Brian's my best friend. He's my partner in Sadzi. We got sober together. We even lived in the same house for a couple of years in South Florida, where we started our company. And I remember sitting on the couch in the house that we were living at, listening to one of Brian Clark's podcasts. Brian Clark was the guy that founded Copyblogger, the guy I mentioned before, was like a
Okay.
hero to me. And he said somewhere in the podcast, I can't even remember if somebody gave him the question. He said, yeah, if you have some kind of monthly recurring revenue model that can be sold through content and doesn't require infinite ads to put it through. He's like, that's kind of the holy grail of a digital business.
Mm.
And I didn't mean to take him so seriously. I think there was just something about that had like a big impression on me. And so
Sure.
like I've never done anything that wasn't content based. I've never bought any ads ever, like in anything. I
Okay.
wouldn't even know how to do it, honestly, which is kind of embarrassing to say. And everything I've done has always been recur, but just because I can stack on top of it.
Yeah.
It has scalability that way. So I love
Yeah.
it. And it was never so obvious to me until you mentioned it. But now that you do,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, to your point, there are certain types of services in the digital world which are kind of project based, right? That you might build somebody a website, get it up and running, and then kind of you move on to the next thing. So there are those types of businesses, but there's plenty of them which are continuing to provide some sort of service on an ongoing basis. But I think that the key part there, and probably is indicative of your business and why it's so successful, is because you continue to deliver value. Right? It's easy to say, okay, you're going to pay me $1,000 a month, $10,000 a month, whatever the amount is, and that might work for a while, but at some point, your customer is going to look at that and go, "What am I getting out of this?" Right? So it's imperative on you to make sure that they're getting value, they're their site's being optimized, that they're getting inbound leads or being found on the web, right? These are all the value points that you're delivering, and you have to make sure that you're doing that continuously, right? Or they're going to cancel. They're gonna go elsewhere.
A lot that I want to respond to with that. First is, maybe we can even get to this later, because I know that most of your listeners have like subscription-based businesses, and that's not necessarily the same as a marketing company, even though in a way it is, right? So the rules are a little bit different, at least I've discovered, when you're talking about digital services that you bill on a recurring basis and a product that you bill on a recurring basis. So I'd be happy to talk about the product as well. But for the services, like, I just have more experience in that. I've been doing it a little longer.
Yeah.
Two things to say there. The first is, God, sometimes when I get asked to be on podcasts, I laugh about it so much because I don't actually have a lot of original ideas. Like, everything that I know, I learned from somebody else. And so I just feel like I'm regurgitating lessons that I learned. But that all came from a Seth Godin book. Again, it's a book called Linchpin. Had a huge, huge impact on me. And it was just about how industrialism and factories incentivized us to create production lines and to scale the productivity of your factory and to make it so that everybody just plays one single role to produce your widget that you put into the world. And I saw so early on that, like, the easiest way for me to keep my clients was just to literally talk to them. And that's it. It sounds so obvious, but it's shocking to me how much people get annoyed or scoff at clients when they send emails because they don't understand something. So look, there's a difference between bending over backwards for a client that's a huge pain in the ass. Fire those people. They don't respect you. They're not worth your time. Like, your time is worth something. But you also have to understand that people's money is their time. And so by trusting you, they're giving you a piece of their time. And all of that to say that I've invested a lot into creating a foundation and a culture in the company that just respects the clients, that we have a cultural aspect that says the very worst thing that could possibly happen in our company is one of our clients calls us and just says, like, I don't get what you're doing. Like, I just don't understand what you're doing, because that's what most agencies are. They think, hey, look, just pay me. Let me do my job. I don't have time to explain this to you. And that's ridiculous. And we made a statement that
plenty operate that way, though.
Yeah, so many of them operate that way. And so that's worked really well for us. The second thing that I wanted to say is it takes a lot of courage to really measure the value of your work on the specific outcome that is desired. And it was hard to get to the point where I was seeing clients going like, yeah, and this is great. You're generating traffic. You're doing these cool things. I can see that you're putting the work in, but all I really care about is phone calls. I need my phone to ring. And it was really, really scary to confront the fact that, like, hey, people are paying you because they need one thing. And I've also noticed that a lot of digital agencies in all types of different spaces, whether it's marketing or creative or whatever, they find ways to make themselves busy and to try to be quote unquote valuable. And I've developed a little bit of, not a resentment, but some pushback against this idea of, like, just be useful, just be valuable, just be useful, just be valuable. And I like to think of it as, like, be effective, because all our clients care about is phone calls. And so we made the decision to really stop reporting on anything else other than phone calls. And if the phone calls aren't good, then we are going to report on the fact that the phone calls aren't good. And we're not going to report on a bunch of other stuff that maybe in the past we would have done to try to make it seem like, yeah, but we got this going on and we got this going on and we're trying some stuff over here. And And it was funny, like really the second that we all made that mental switch to just focus everything, live or die, on the effectiveness of our work and not like the value and the usefulness of our work, the whole thing just completely blew up. It exploded in terms of our growth, because I think people can feel that. I think they appreciate it and they respect it. It's not always that you have to be generating like 10x returns every month. Sometimes it's just about like, hey, this is what we tried and it didn't work, and here's the results of it. And so we're going to do this instead. Our clients like appreciate that. And I think that's been another reason why it's been effective.
Yeah. When you say phone call, you're talking about a lead, right? Somebody coming to them for some reason interested in whatever service that is. That always in the form of phone calls, or could that be an email or a meeting booked or something like that?
No, it's always phone calls. So healthcare facilities almost always have a rep that answers inbound inquiries, and when somebody calls, it has the highest conversion as opposed to like a chat or even like a lead form. We kicked all that stuff to the side. Be like, this isn't what people want. People want their phones to ring, and so this is what we're going to focus on.
Yeah. Well, you can say that is value as defined by your clients, right? That's really the value that matters to them. To the point you were saying earlier about some other agencies maybe throw up all of these other metrics and say, yeah, this part over here might suck, but look at all these other great ones. That's them trying to define value for the client rather than the other way around, right? But you guys said, yeah, we could do that, but let's instead focus over here on the things that we know that they care about and forget everything else. So that's value in the way that they've defined it. If we meet that value, especially if nobody else is focusing on it, your business is blown up because of it, right?
Precisely. And it was, I had to learn that lesson as well. So it's been 6 or 7 years of that being really embedded into our culture. But that single-handedly was the moment where, we were kind of doing okay. We were having fun. Like, wow, look at us. We're building our own company. We have a couple employees. And then all of a sudden it was like, damn, like we're a real company now with all of the things, right? And that really was the defining moment.
Yeah. You said at the beginning, though, that was scary to do, to toss everything else aside. I mean, I would suppose that the fear was, if that's the only metric we have or the only metric we say we're going to care about and it sucks, our clients might fire us, right?
Yeah, like, for sure. That's why I started off that rant, if it was a rant, with saying that it takes courage to do that, because it's so much easier to I work out a lot, and so somehow or another I always have like fitness analogies, but you either picked up the weight that was your goal or you didn't. And if you didn't, you could always come up with reasons why, but like this is going well and this is going well and that's all great, but at the end of the day, you didn't do it. And
all you did was move the goalpost. Right? You just moved it to a different spot.
For sure. Yeah. And so people will appreciate that, I think.
Yeah, they do. But you have to be honest with yourself, right? Because otherwise you are just kind of trying to move towards and focus on the what was good about it, which can be okay. It kind of saying that makes it sound like there can't be other good things to focus on or appreciate. But if that was your goal, if that was the ultimate goal, and you just chose to ignore it or not call your baby ugly if it is, like, you're kind of just lying to yourself, right?
Precisely. Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious your thoughts in today's digital world, especially around content marketing, with, of course, ChatGPT and everything else going off. Where do you see the state of things now, and for copywriters in general, as it sits today, with all this focus on AI and where ultimately it's going?
I'm kind of bored with AI, to be honest. I mean, look, nobody knows what's going to happen. And anytime you hear traditionalists, maybe we can call them, say, there's no way this is going to replace such and such, I'm always like, don't be so sure, right? Like, we're always looking for ways to make life easier on ourselves. And this is a whole nother conversation entirely, but a byproduct of that is making life more difficult for ourselves in other ways. And so I'm sure that we're going to see some of that. my gut tells me I like to think of everything, almost everything, in terms of incentives. And I think you just figure out how it's going to play out by doing a little bit of thought experimenting with incentives. So, does commoditized generic content make personalized, experiential, sharing content more valuable or less valuable? And I can't see how it would ever make it less valuable if if the there's a guy named Mike King. He runs some kind of SEO agency. He's a really cool guy. He said something to me once I'll never forget. He says, from an SEO standpoint, if an AI can make every piece of content perfectly optimized in the perfect way every single time, then doesn't that mean that the entire first page of Google is going to be the exact same piece of content over and over and over again? And if that's the case, what ranks? And I remember thinking like, that's really, really interesting. If everything is perfectly exactly the same every single time, then what ranks? And my viewpoint is that there'll have to be some kind of shared experience in it as well, because the answer isn't always the answer. Like, the answer usually needs to come with personal feedback and personal insight. And this is what it looked like for me. I also think a lot about like evolution, and I think that people are a lot more primal than we give ourselves credit for. I think this is a strange analogy, but I think it's one of the reasons why like those VR goggles are never ever going to take off, because I don't think that it's easy to make people not care about the footsteps they hear behind them when they can't see. There's just something like really baked into our amygdalas and our brainstem. And I think the same is true with talking and with affection and with being in groups. And like, I think if anything, it'll make the market for community more valuable, because that'll be the thing that is more rare. Everything else can be commoditized. So who knows what's going to happen, but look, I don't see anything happening. All I see is people building newsletters and sharing their experience and doing better and better than ever before. So I don't know. I really can't call it.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the types of content that you've clearly written a lot of, where you're talking about things that you've gone through, sobriety and with all of these centers that deal with that as well. Those are very experiential, right? It's about what I went through and how I experienced it. I think about some of the content that we write, how we do billing and payments. It's, in a lot of ways, people look at that as a commodity, but it's very much not. But the content that we try to create, I feel like sometimes we over polish it. Like we're just trying to say, this is the way it is, and, kind of list out the steps, and here's how all of these things happen. And sometimes when we've written things that are just more, here's what I saw when I did this thing or analyzed this data or whatever, and my gut told me this, and this is what we found, and went through an experience, rather than those black and white bullet points, that does better. Like that's the articles that people actually read to the end, rather than, just kind of skim for some specific data point. So I like your viewpoint there. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's certainly something that ChatGPT or any AI can't replicate, is your experience.
Only thing they can't replicate. And they can replicate something that sounds like your experience.
Yeah.
But that's like the evolutionary lizard brain part that I'm talking about. I think a person will still want, even if they sound exactly the same, they'll still naturally seek the one that says, oh, well, this one's real. I think people underestimate that reading and stories actually are something. It's more than just words and information on a page, right? And that. So anyway, I just, the thought experiment I have in my head is, if everything can be done perfectly every single time, does that make uniqueness more valuable or less valuable? And I think it makes it more valuable. So
Yeah.
I'm just banking on being me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that perspective. That's pretty cool. Well, Tim, what's next for you and your businesses? I mean, you guys launching anything new, or what's your outlook for the next couple of years?
No, I'm focused on Copyblogger Academy right now. I know that
Okay.
we talked a lot about the agency stuff, and I'm happy to talk about the membership site as well. It's been such a learning experience for me. It hasn't been so much running a subscription community as much as it's been. I didn't appreciate, how would you say, like the infrastructure required
Okay.
to have it go smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such a learning experience. I mean, it took me 2.5 years really just to feel like I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, this is good. Like if I bought this, I would really, really, really enjoy it. The
Mm-hmm.
onboarding experience, like the automations that happen when you sign up for your subscription, just the whole thing,
Okay.
it was a lot harder than I thought. But now that like I feel like I'm over the hill, I'm so excited about it.
What were one or two of the things that you underestimated what it would take to get it to where you wanted it to be?
One of them was like merchants. So the tech is a lot more important than you think. I don't know how many people listen to this are going to be familiar with different software products, but when I first built a membership site, I built it on MemberPress. And that seemed cool, but it was very, very clear very early that the community aspect of it was more important than just premier content. And so I'm
Okay.
thinking, wow, I got to have a community. And so then I found this site called Mighty Networks, and that seemed like a really cool native community that wasn't Facebook. And when you sign up for a Mighty Networks account, there's like an actual, let's call it 2.0 functionality where you can post stuff and there's the instant messages and the stuff that we're all familiar with. But Mighty Networks really, really stunk because they didn't have the ability to customize your landing pages. There was just one landing page. So like I'm a copywriter and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't create different offers for different levels of the
Okay.
community.
Yeah.
But then what happens is when you make those changes, it's not like you can just flip a switch because everybody's credit card information is encrypted, So it's like, hey, you're going to get an invoice every month. I'm talking to my customers right now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
making the switch. I'm sending an email saying, "Hey, you're going to get an invoice every month from MemberPress, but all of the stuff that you're going to get is from this other company called Mighty Networks. And I know it's kind of confusing, but like, just trust me." And no one's going to just trust you. You're like, what the hell's going on? Like, where's my account? And then I signed up for Mighty Networks and I realized, wow, this isn't good at all because I can't customize my sales processes.
Yeah.
I can't make different membership levels. So many, many hard lessons. That's just the tip of the iceberg, believe me. But I landed on a company called Circle, which seems by and large to be the best membership platform that there is. Circle is really good because they don't actually try to do the sales for you. They just make it so you can create a checkout page directly through Stripe, and then you can write your landing page wherever you want. And all you got to
Okay.
do is connect your landing page to the checkout page. So they don't have any of that in. It's just, here's the community, here's the way to create the checkout page. And in terms of marketing it, you do whatever you want. And
Yeah.
it's been great. So man, when you get me talking about the lessons that I learned trying to figure out this membership community, I catch myself going on a bit of a tirade because there were so many times where I was just like, this sucks and I hate this and I
Yeah.
feel like I'm failing and I feel like I'm pissing off my members and I'm letting people down. But my persistence really, really paid off. And eventually we got to the point where I look at it these days and I'm like, this is great. The members are having a great experience. I'm making money. It's all going well, but it was hard.
Did you feel like sometimes you were down a path on a particular platform and you're like, this isn't great, but I'm pot committed. Like I've invested so much time, effort, and energy. I really need to try to make this work. And what made you finally go, screw it, enough is enough. I'm just going to write that off and move on to something better.
Well, great question because so I'll give you the short version again. I know that I can close deals. And so when I signed up for it, when I bought Copyblogger, my plan wasn't actually to make a bunch of products of it. I have a friend of mine, his name is Johnny Naster. He owns an agency, and I made a deal with Johnny. I said, hey, let's combine. We'll start an SEO agency. We called it digital commerce. If you go to digitalcommerce.com, you can see it. And my first plan was like, okay, I have this media site that has a ton of traffic. I can drive leads and I can close deals. And I know Johnny is a great SEO. So I'm just going to turn copyblogger.com into a lead generation site and use it to close deals. I figured that's the comfortable thing. But me being stupid and stubborn, I thought, nah, let me do something more, because that's not cool enough, right? Like everybody on Twitter has these really sweet membership sites with like these hyper scalable models, and I want to be that. I don't want to be like comfortable in my own life. Like, let me torture myself. And and so like really, there was plenty of times when I thought I should just give everybody their money back and make this simple and easy and boring. But I don't know, man. There was really something about it where I felt an obligation, because Copyblogger had given me so much, and like so much of what I learned was from the access that I had to the people that I looked up to, who were behind the scenes, like I said, Brian Clark, and there was Sonia, and there was this guy named Jared, and even Johnny Naster, my partner now. I originally discovered him and like followed his SEO agency because I used to listen to his podcast that I discovered 10 years ago on Copyblogger. So I felt this obligation, and it really was that intangible that made me keep going until I figured it out.
Well, Tim, this has been a lot of fun, and you shared some pretty interesting insights along the way of what's worked for you and why you've been successful. I think this has been hugely valuable to our listeners. But if anybody listening today, had some questions about what we talked about or wants to learn more about, your businesses, where are the best places for them to go?
My blog, timstodds.com. I write a weekly newsletter. I publish probably 2 to 3 long form blog posts a month. People tell me that they like it. timstodz.com. If you want to learn more about me, basically everything Tim Stoddart, but my website is the best place to go. I send a good newsletter every week, and
okay,
it's valuable.
All right,
So
awesome. I'll be signing up for sure. Cool. Well, Tim, thanks again. Really appreciate all of the insights, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast today.
My pleasure, Nick. Good luck with everything, and congrats on all the success of the show.
Thank you.